Go by Chaz Davis. I'm representing Texas Network of Youth Services. I am a member of the Young Adult Leadership Council, and I am here in support of HB 2181. This bill is important for me and other youth who experience homelessness because we benefited from staff that listen to us in supportive spaces, but there needs to be more. We need more organizations open to youth and young adults. We also need housing specifically for us. Navigating homelessness and using housing voucher as a young person is very difficult. It puts us in unstable situations where the risk of being trafficked and turning to gang violence are higher. I entered foster care when I was 13 years old and living in Texas. My last placement, I believe, was my 11th, was in Detroit because of my level of care was high, and I've been denied many placements in Texas. On my 18th birthday, when I aged out of care, I was flown to Houston, Texas, where I grew up. My caseworker picked me up, drove me to Houston, and took me to a shelter. I entered homelessness directly from care, and I was in a place I hadn't been in several years. Adding to that, the medication I had been taking in care were no longer being managed. This was a big change for me. The shelter, the Star of Hope, was good. They provided good services, including assigning me a counselor and providing support with health care, getting me glasses, medication, and therapy. They also helped me navigate transferring out of Detroit High School and getting into a GED program. As long as I asked for it and showed responsibility, they would set me up with whatever services I needed. After 3 months, I left the shelter. I entered into a transitional housing program, but it was only intended to be temporary, a year max. I didn't have a good time in the program. None of the supports that I had in the shelter were available in the transitional housing program. I ended up leaving early. At the point, I was living in different people's houses, crashing on their couches, moving constantly. I felt like I wasn't getting anywhere in my life. It was 3 years later, I received a permanent housing voucher. When my housing caseworker told me, I felt like a huge weight was being taken off my shoulders. Permanent housing is something people wait for years. But I had 6 months to find a place or my voucher would expire. And if I didn't, I'll be back at square one like I never had the voucher. It's hard finding apartments that accept the vouchers. Some would advertise they accept the vouchers, but when I would call, they would say they don't after all. Some vouchers might specify that they can only be used for one-bedroom apartment, even though I found a two-bedroom that could work. Meanwhile, I was shifting around between temporary living situations. Sometimes I had to pay to live with someone, but I did the best to save my money for housing. After 3 months of hunting for apartments, I found the right place. At that point, an inspection housing was required, which took another 2 months. 2 more months of crashing on couches, but the end was in sight. In total, it took 5 months to actually be able to use my housing voucher. This bill can make a big difference for youth and young adults that are experience homelessness. If landlords are to accept vouchers, it could prevent some of the delays of finding housing with the voucher that I experienced. This bill could also provide more resources to youth and young adults like Star Hope did for me, but most of all, consistently providing those support who have made the biggest difference. I spent years in temporary living situations because I was trying to figure things out for myself. I feel accomplished and honestly shocked to have my own apartment now. It took me a while to adjust to not being homeless. I have a car and I felt like I had to keep everything close to me, so I always pack my things with me in my car. Now I'm working with T-Noise and hoping to work with the Covenant House. I want other youth and young adults to see me as an example. You could be successful even if you've been in care, mental health facilities, or juvenile detention centers. Please support HB 2181 and the homeless youth and young adults it would benefit.
Thank you, Chaz. Members, any questions? Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else wishing?